is an election in Hungary on April the 12th. Viktor Orban is behind by double-digit percentage points.
For more than a decade and a half, Viktor Orban has outlasted almost everyone in European politics.
He's proven very adept at holding on to power, and he clearly has a great appetite for power.
But he and the Hungary he shaped are under pressure from stagnant growth, high inflation, mounting scandals, and now a formidable opponent.
Hungary's election is not just important for voters in Hungary, but also in Europe, the US, as well as in Russia.
Whoever is in power will have a very hard time over the coming years to address both societal, economic, and political concerns.
And what happens in Hungary won't stay in Hungary. Inside Europe, it wields influence far beyond its size.
The loan remains blocked because one leader is not honoring his word.
So how did Orban create one of Europe's most durable political machines? Why is it now under strain? And no matter who wins in April, why does Hungary's next move affect the rest of the world? As a member of the European Union, even small countries can veto decisions of global significance, and Hungary is one of them.
Hungary's allies in both the EU and NATO have become used to Orban opposing many of their joint initiatives.
Hungary plans to block every EU decision concerning Ukraine until oil starts flowing again through the Druzhba pipeline in Ukraine.
Hungary has dragged its feet at NATO's expansion when it took in eventually Finland as well as Sweden, but only after serious foot dragging from Orban.
Very often it seems that the interest that the Hungarian government is trying to protect is that of Russia and sometimes maybe even China,
including via doubling down on Russian energy contracts at a time when the EU is trying to tighten sanctions.
Much of that stance reflects the priorities of one man, Prime Minister Viktor Orban, and his desire to move past the country's former Soviet occupation.
He has cultivated ties in Moscow, in Washington, and Beijing.
He also waded into US politics and endorsed Donald Trump during his first presidential campaign.
And Trump returned the favor recently, endorsing Orban.
But that relationship is rooted in a system the Prime Minister began building years earlier. Orban first won office in 1998 as the leader of the right-wing Fidesz party. He lost office in 2002, but not forever.
Orban returned to power after 8 years in opposition in 2010.
He came back to power with a mission to institute regime change.
And to build what he later called an illiberal state, an ideology that stems from his disdain of liberal democracy.
Almost the very first thing he did was to pass a law changing the electoral system.
In effect, critics say, helping entrench Fidesz's advantage. And that was only the start. Orban also pushed through a new constitution.
This included removing, effectively, the top Supreme Court justice.
He also managed to install his political loyalists in state institutions as well as the media.
Newspapers were taken over by his business allies.
Some they actually just shut down.
That allowed him to essentially create a national echo chamber.
Public media functions as a megaphone communication channel for the governing party.
It has that kind of sense of constantly cultivating images of an enemy or a threat from outside.
For years, that grip helped him control the political story, even as economic strains mounted. After returning to power on a wave of anger over the financial crisis, Orban presided over years of modest growth, rising wages, and new factory jobs. His government delivered tangible financial benefits to families. It's just that with a sputtering economy, these have become increasingly costly to sustain.
Economic growth and inflation have been really the twin problems of the Orban government. Hungary had the highest levels of inflation after the pandemic, and Hungarians had been really struggling to make ends meet over the past several years.
Adding to the pressure, since 2015, house prices in Hungary have more than tripled, outpacing the EU average and rising faster than incomes for many Hungarians. It's a far cry from the tailwinds Orbán enjoyed upon his return to office, following the initial challenge of overcoming the effects of the global financial crisis.
He was very lucky at the start. The world entered a period of low inflation and global growth, and then loads of European Union money flooded in. And critics say that actually a lot of that luck was wasted because it was ploughed into kind of visible projects like, prettification of town squares, prestige building, and things like that.
Meanwhile, neighbours like Poland pulled ahead as Hungary lost momentum.
Whether it's income per capita or household spending or cancer survival rates or number of universities in the global top 1,000, and it's sort of now kind of at the back of the queue, whereas once it was at the top.
Hungary was doing relatively well after its accession to the EU, but if we look at the trajectory, we see that the Hungarian economy is lagging behind, whereas Poland is taking off.
The government has had to retrench investments, including in public services, that were never really well funded to begin with. Orbán himself has had to pass an executive order to stock hospitals with toilet paper.
Now, big industrial bets were meant to restart growth and fix a lot of that, but so far they've fallen short.
Orbán has sought to position Hungary as a bridge between East and West, including economically, where, for example, Hungary serves as a hub for German car companies, especially during their transition to the electric vehicle era. So he's brought in a lot of Asian, Chinese, South Korean battery makers in order to boost Hungary's economy.
It hasn't really delivered because the transition to electric vehicles has gone slightly more slowly than we expected, and because the German economy, on which Hungary relies for exports, is itself struggling. Then there were a series of scandals coming out of the battery factories relating to leaks of toxic chemicals into the environment.
At the same time, anger grew over the widening gap between a well-connected elite and ordinary Hungarians.
Corruption has been one of the biggest problems under the Orbán administration. According to Transparency International, Hungary has plunged in rankings all the way to last place in the European Union.
Taken together, a stagnant economy, failing services, and deep corruption created a powder keg. That opening was seized by Peter Magyar, a former insider of Orbán's ruling elite.
It took an insider-turned critique to credibly deliver the message that the system is rotten.
Using the once marginal TISA party as his vehicle, Magyar largely sidestepped Orbán's media machine.
He's visited almost every city, every hamlet. He's walked hundreds of kilometers to meet voters.
The new opposition party managed to not only win over the supporters of old opposition parties from the left and the liberals in the capital, but also build a strong base all over the country.
His appeal is simple. Keep what voters like, strip out the corruption, fix public services, and repair Hungary's relationship with the EU. Magyar must thread a very small needle, appealing to disillusioned Fidesz voters without alienating the centre.
If you thought Fidesz was the right kind of thing, then you probably are going to think his party, TISA, is kind of okay as well. He is the main receptacle for just about anybody who wants to get rid of Orbán.
So faced with a real challenger, Orbán returned to a familiar playbook, defining a new enemy.
The campaign strategy of Fidesz has been built on fear-mongering. It was before the center-left and the liberal opposition, Brussels and EU institutions, George Soros, migrants, LGBTQ communities, and now it's the war.
Orbán has made Ukraine essentially the centerpiece of his campaign.
There are some really eye-catching posters up around the country. The message is that life in Hungary is tough, sure, but it could be so much worse. And these cheeky Ukrainians are prepared to risk all of that.
Orbán is also portraying himself as a strong leader who is taken seriously by global leaders, but it less and less resonates across the society. Even if Orbán, Fidesz, loses this election, it doesn't mean that Fidesz would lose power in the system.
He will still be the top of a party with immense power, lots of money, control of media assets, and a demonstrated will to power, essentially.
There are captured state institutions which could continue to represent Fidesz's interests and could significantly block the actions of a new government.
Orbán is the last politician that anybody would count out